Hello and welcome to this episode of the Magnetic Woman Show. I'm so excited today to have another guest from the Feminine Wealth Vault, Paula Lacobara. Paula is a woman that I have known, respected, admired, been connected with for probably a decade now, which is insane to say. And I am so honored that she's part of the Feminine Wealth Vault and so excited for this podcast episode. So, Paula's an international transformational coach and mentor who teaches female entrepreneurs to reconnect with your feminine energy so that you can learn to trust yourself in life, in business, in your relationships, creating more flow, more ease, more turn on, more pleasure, more radiance, all the things that we love here. So, I'm really excited to dive in with Paula. So, Paula, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I know, a decade. That is awesome. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I am so happy to be here. I am so grateful to be part of the vault as well. We have so many juicy stuff to share. So, yeah, let's create
I'm
some
so,
magic.
so excited. So, again, Paula and I have known each other for like a decade now, and she has been a woman, like I said, who I admire, I respect, and you have done so much with your business, with your life, with
Mm.
helping women really step into their feminine. And I know prior to this episode, you and I have talked a lot about how the last like year has been a big transformational year for yourself, for myself, I think for a lot of the women listening. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about who you are and the work you do and kind of like where you're at now with life and
Oh
business.
my God, how long do we have? But before we dive in, I also want to tell you that I admire your work, your passion, your authenticity, the way you show up for every single thing you do. It's really inspiring. Every time I watch something that you create, every time I watch a reel or a live or anything that you do, you just so embody your work that I'm feeling so grateful and blessed to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you. So you as well work with the feminine energy and archetypes and helping women step into a power probably that most of them have never really experienced prior to working with you, or at least not at the level that they step into when they work with you. So, what was your journey with your own feminine energy and feminine power?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I am from Argentina originally, right? So I grew up watching my mom putting lipstick on. Like I remember she was a working woman. She would go every morning to work. And so I remember just like watching her, like in the mirror, and she would not get out of the house without lipstick or eyelashes and really put together. Like my mom was very much like that. But it's in general, it's my culture, I would say. So I never thought I wasn't feminine.
Mm.
Like I am feminine. I take care of my body. I take care of, in the sense of like, maybe a little bit over the top at times, being a little demanding, like dieting and stuff like that, like that relationship. But I never not saw myself as feminine.
Right.
I'm a woman, like that's what I do. Get my nails done, I get my makeup on, all that stuff. So I never really equated it to not being in my feminine. And when I started my business, things shifted a little bit because I realized that I mean, when I had jobs and, I did what I needed to do. But when I started my business, things started to shift because I was hustling. Like I was working really hard. I was like all these things that we talk about, like making it work, make it happen. I never saw it as not a norm. But when I started because I'm an older sister, I had a special needs brother, I have a story of putting everything on my shoulders, being the responsible one. I have two younger sisters, so I was the one like making sure everything, helping out in the house, getting good grades, not to bother anyone, not to, right? So that was my story. And so for me, that's just who I am, like just part of who I am. When I started my business and I started hustling, now it was like I had to step it up a notch to make this business work, right? To make it successful. I was learning from the best, and that's what you had to do. You had to make it happen. You had to hustle. You had to do all these things. And so on the outside, you would say, I mean, you saw me like that we were traveling here, we were traveling there, and all the glam and all the beauty of, of what that lifestyle can bring. But inside, there was a tug of war, constant tug of war. And at some point, I was like, what am I doing?
Yep.
Right? Like,
Yep.
why am I creating all this? What's the point? And the more I had to hustle, the less time I had for the things that were fun for me, the things that were important to me, my relationships, right? My relationship with my husband, even though we were working together, it was all about work. There
Right.
was no like, so that was our main focus.
Yeah.
And I realized that I went into survival.
Yep. Of course. Of course.
And
I
so,
see.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So 2020 was like a breaking point. 2020 was like, oh my gosh, I get to breathe and I have full permission. And I'm not gonna say that up until 2020 I didn't have my backs and forths, but it was okay, now I rest and I'm all focused here. And then okay, now I have to go get it, hustle 2 in the morning, emails, So it was like I was divided. I was,
Uh,
how would I say that? Yeah, split. It
yep.
was either this
Yep.
or that.
Hmm.
And I was manifesting incredible things, but
Sure.
I couldn't hold them. I couldn't sustain them,
Yeah.
right? I didn't understand why until later. So 2020 was like the perfect excuse to say, okay, time out. I need time out. And I started to pull back and
Yep.
pull back and pull back and really questioning everything.
Yep. Yeah.
Is this what I want? Is this how I want it? And really listen now, listening to that part of myself. But before 2020, I was trying to find a way because I am very brainy myself, like
Same.
extremely brainy. And my go-to is here and then here. So I like the feminine work was when I started to understand. I remember I took this program at the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur. I took this program, actually, it was right before that led me to open my own business. Um, about sensuality. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And that led me to, oh, and I tapped into my purpose through the feminine, through that work of the feminine. I tapped into my purpose.
Word.
And then everything just came together. And I know it's for someone who's listening from the outside, it's like, well, what do you mean everything came together? Well, that's the power of the feminine. You can't really fully explain it,
No.
when you start connecting with these deeper parts of yourself that are not just beauty, makeup on, looking nice, yada yada, but then you're tapping more into the deepest parts of the feminine, which is again connecting with your joy, with your senses, with how you feel. Because when we are here, and I include myself, like I said, everything had to be filtered through my mind, which then it wasn't, I wasn't really feeling it. So I wasn't really trusting what I was feeling until I didn't have evidence.
Yes.
But that's part of the process, and that's okay. The
Definitely.
thing is when you just only wait for that to trust yourself or to trust your feelings. So I needed to kind of I needed to create that bridge,
Yep. Yep. Definitely.
right? Right. And so in my work, because I was already teaching receiving, I became really good at receiving because it was the hardest thing being
Right.
being an older sister, being the I got it girl, right? Like the I got it. Don't worry, I got it.
Well,
Pilot, pilot.
yep. Living from here up. Yeah,
Right. And in that when I started to connect with the feminine, I realized how hard it was for me to receive and how much I was blocking myself.
definitely. And you're not alone in that, right? Like I think so I think every single woman who is listening to this episode and or part of the vault, we are very powerful, which is why we're drawn to this work and we're drawn to lead, but we're also very intellectual, right? Like I'm the same way. It's always my mind first, also why I do the work that I do, because my entire life it was like I received praise and acknowledgement for being really smart, for being really good, for following the rules. So, of course, that was such a core part of the identity that I created and was operating under. And then, similarly, over the last few years, it's like all of that crumbled, right? Because it's like, well, what if you don't have the external results that you have always had? What if all these markers, quote unquote, external markers, of success aren't there? Can you still feel worthy? Can you still allow yourself to receive? Can you still find joy and pleasure with who you are and what you're doing in the world? Like, do you still see, at least this was for me, like, do you still see what you're doing and contributing as important if you're not getting the external validation that you were so used to, right? And, I
Yeah.
think living in the patriarchal culture that we live in, it's really easy, like you said, for some external markers of traditional quote unquote femininity to be passed off as like, well, I'm in my feminine. Like, I always look good. I have my hair done. I have my nails done. Check. And it's like, but there's this massive disconnection internally, or
Yeah.
an emptiness, which is
Mm,
what I think a lot of women end up feeling, right? Is this constant chasing, like you were explaining,
yeah.
constantly striving, constantly chasing, but internally, like never feeling satisfied, fulfilled, proud, like full in a good way. Like, ah,
Yeah.
life is full. And I think so many women have gone through some period, something over the last few years to really bring it up to the surface of like, who am I and what am I doing and why am I doing that? And like, is that how I want to be living and operating?
Hmm.
As you said, when you tap into that feminine power that we have within, you can't explain it, but that's when things begin to line up and align.
Yeah. 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 It's the outside instead of the so I say that the good girl archetype, I created archetypes and I'll go there in a minute, but the good girl is the one that needs the validation and outside. Without that validation, she can't feel worthy. That's what leads us to overdo, overgive, overwork, over everything, overcompensate, over everything. And plus, now it's shifted. And I know I talked about this, but when I started my business, again, like what, 16, 15 years ago, um, the pressure of like the ideas of success were
Yeah.
completely different, and it was measured through, again, how much you achieved, right? How much money you have in the bank, what kind of lifestyle you have. And somehow, yes, all that is amazing. I'm not gonna lie. I had it and I can create it again. But at some point, I was doing it more for what it was supposed to be than what it really felt true to me. Because what that level of success created, and I'm talking about me, I'm not saying that level, for some people it works. For me, it like I was sacrificing way too much because I didn't know how to do it in a different way. And so what I needed to do was I needed to really get close, with myself and say, okay, how do you really want this and how do you want to create it? Because that's why I couldn't sustain it because I wasn't integrated, I wasn't in it.
Yep.
So this is the part, like if I was just doing, because I'm also a really good student.
Of
I
course.
love, right? Yeah, I'm like check, 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 and A plus, A plus, A plus. I love that. So I had to like, okay, I'm doing the best. Like I'm gonna be the best because I'm gonna give it my all, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, especially in a business like this, which is purpose driven, and I'm teaching what I need to learn. I had to be in the equation. I had to. Without it, it made no sense.
Yeah.
It felt like I reached a certain level and I looked around me and who's next to me?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that's when I was like, okay, we need to shift. But before that, I created I remember I was like exhausted. I was in this launch and I was figuring everything out. My husband and I were figuring everything out, but I was burnt out. I was just tired. My body was breaking down. And these are one of the signs that if your body is talking, it means that you're out of alignment. Something is off. And when we don't listen, that's when it gets worse and worse and worse. The universe is going to show you where you're out of alignment. And so at some point, I remember I was just exhausted. I couldn't, anything I ate was like, it hurt my body. I'm like, what is going on? I was living in LA at that time. And so Rob, my husband, took me on a trip to Maine to look at the ocean and not do anything else. And it just so happened that that summer was actually very cold for what it usually is. So I end up sleeping. So of course, wait, I was trying to figure out a way to teach my clients the feminine, but the clients like me who were like right here in their head, right? Like, how do I explain the feminine? Because it's not tangible. You can't really explain it. You have to feel it. You have to embody it. You have to connect with it. How do I explain it? And I remember also because I had that going on in myself and I kind of was able to connect with it, but how do I share this with others, right? Like cuz anyway, so I brought 5 books, of course,
Of
with
course.
me. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. 5 books on vacation when you're supposed to be doing nothing. Perfect. Great.
Right, right. Of course. Well, that was what I was. I opened the first book. I read 3 pages and I fell asleep on that chair. You know those chairs that I don't know how you call those chairs, but anyway, lunch chairs. And I
Yeah.
was just like, I fell asleep and I slept 14 hours each day, 3 hour naps and 11 hours at night. That's how exhausted I was. But let me tell you, because one thing I wasn't doing was surrender.
Yeah. Uh,
Big word, big word, big word that's thrown out there, and you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. How do I do that? Well, that's what I had to do. So it was like somehow, again, like I talk like this, but somehow the universe just forced me to do it. I could not do, and I didn't touch the books at all, of course.
Amazing.
When I got back home, we were living in between New York and LA. We got back to New York that first night at 3 in the morning. Kid you not, I had the whole download of what I was looking for. All I needed, and that's when I understood. Not only I got the archetypes, but I also understood, oh, this is how it works.
Yeah. The rest
Allowing.
and the surrender. Like it's something, and surrender gets such a bad reputation because people see it as like a sign of weakness, or it's kind of like conflated with giving up. Like, okay,
Yes,
surrender. But it really is one, it's an action, right? It's not giving up. It's a releasing and kind of like a letting go, like you're holding on so tight and you just like it's that exhale knowing that there's going to be another inhale, right? But we're taught like to live on edge in so many ways. So many people are living really with a dysregulated nervous system in a trauma response of like that's part of what the overdoing and the overfunctioning is it's a trauma response, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to get a sense of safety from constantly being in motion.
Yeah.
When you
Not stopping at all.
when you exhale and you can just kind of like release your grip a little bit, it allows stuff to flow in. It allows the new business, the new pattern, the new whatever to come in. And I
Yeah.
wanted to go back to, because again, you and I have both gone through a cycle of the void, the releasing
Mm,
and rebirth. And like, I think so many people who started, especially online businesses pre 2020, went
hmm
through the period of the hustling, the pushing, the more trips, the next launch has to be even bigger, and then the next month has to be even bigger, and like really fixated on these external arbitrary
Yeah.
markers
Yeah.
of success. And I think that it's like there's a few things at play. One is that, as you said, it's not truly authentic for everybody. Like a lot of people got really swept up, myself included in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
really swept up into like, okay, then if I launch this, then the next launch has to be double, and only if I'm doubling every time or every month is it like working, and am I successful, and am I leading? So I think, for a lot of people, it wasn't authentic. You just get swept up in it. And then there's also this element of we move through different seasons and cycles in our life. And as you said, you've been in business for, 15 years. I've known you for 10. It's like inevitably in a decade, there's going to be a season and a cycle of like what was true, what was authentic, what was working, and what was fulfilling isn't that case anymore because I'm evolving. And I think women
Yeah.
like us, leaders like the feminine is growth. The feminine is death and rebirth. So we can't sit here and be like, okay, we're gonna be in our feminine, but we refuse to acknowledge or participate in the death and rebirth cycle. It's like that's not how this works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're fully connected. Yes.
And as part of the death element of the death and rebirth is that surrender that you're talking about, is that space that you got to where you're like, I'm gonna rest.
I
Because
love I'm sorry. No,
no, you're fine. Rest is just as important as the action.
yeah. Well, and to piggyback on that, I love that you said it's actually an action, even though it doesn't feel like it. It is an action because it's the act of full and deep trust.
Yeah. Yeah. It is right. Full and deep trust and full and deep trust, like externally for the goddess, for the universe, for whatever you connect to, but also full and deep trust in yourself. Like
Yes.
I've got me. Like I can weather anything because I've got me at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I have the tools, the practices, the resources, and even the intelligence to kind of know like, okay, this is something that maybe I'm not equipped to deal with or I want support and I'm gonna go seek it out.
Yeah. And to your point is especially women who are in this type of businesses where we are in it.
Yep.
We are in it with our clients in different stages and different times and but we are in it. So yes, there are iterations of our work. I've had many iterations, shifting my programs, adding more stuff, taking some stuff that I didn't feel like it made sense anymore. And so we're in constant motion. That's also part of what the feminine is like. We're in constant motions and again the ocean, right? Like the waves, like there's the undercurrent and then there's the wave. And then so it's all part of it. And if we don't tune in with the cycles, with nature, everything. It's we're outside, inside, it's all connected. And so, yeah,
Definitely.
I
And
love that we're talking about this.
also to tie it back into the vault, because that's one of the main reasons why we're here, is like I think for so many women, so many powerful, intelligent women, entrepreneurs, leaders, over the last few years, again, we've really seen this crumbling of the old paradigm, the hustling, the success at any cost, the like, let me override my body to
Yeah,
get the numbers, and really tuning in and attuning to ourselves, and therefore how we define wealth, success, and power changes, right? Like, I think, again, in the online coaching industry, especially income has been overinflated to be a representation of your worth, leadership, power, and success.
yeah,
We've seen, because both you and I have been around the block a few times, we've seen plenty of people with huge numbers who are not good leaders, right? Who have not done a lot of their own inner work, and
hmm,
who are not showing up in an authentic way, or in a way where they're like really able to lead and not just be activated or triggered or whatever. We see people who are making a lot of money, but then maybe you get into their container and you're like, this actually like isn't that great, and that's not a judgment or a criticism, as much as I think that patriarchy and capitalism especially assigns worth, success, and power specifically to money, right? And I heard this once where it was like, oh, women, companies that have women in leadership roles have less, what was it? Like, basically, their profit quarter after quarter isn't always growing. And I'm like, if that is how we're only measuring success, like we're missing the boat, because then when you dig a little deeper, you find companies that have female leadership tend to have a much better work culture. The employees have a much better work-life balance. Like everybody feels supported and include, you know what I mean? It's like, so we're just using one metric of a,
right.
a number needing to exponentially grow all the time to be the marker of success or power. So again, I just think like so many women are reevaluating what success, power, and wealth is. And that's why I wanted to host this vault.
I
And
know. I'm so excited for it. Yeah.
I did a podcast episode on this already, but 2024 was the worst year financially in my business, even since the first year. Like my first year in business was better than last year.
Hmm.
Yet, I am happier. I am more at peace. I feel so much more well rested. I feel so much more deeply connected in friendships. And so it's like that number of income in my business, it's going to go up again. Like that's inevitable. But I also feel so much wealthier in every other area of my life, right? And I think that that is truly the power of the feminine, is like we get to break through this illusion that power, success, leadership, wealth is like one or a handful of metrics, and not, we get to break through that and be like, no, it's like who I am, how I'm living. Like nobody that starts an online business does it because they want to create something where it's basically a job, they're burning out, and they're even more unhappy than they were before. Like we did this because it's like we want a creative outlet, we want to be financially supported, we want to make money in a way that feels amazing,
Doing what we love. Yeah.
and we want to have fun and have a fulfilling life. And yet the cycles just end up repeating where people aren't having fun, aren't having a fulfilling life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like for me, um, it was to bring the feminine, but also to allow, because when the feminine is off, I would call it, when the feminine is um we're in that cycle of overworking, overdoing, pushing ourselves, pressuring ourselves. Um, we're not in a healthy feminine. We're not in a healthy state of the feminine. So then what happens is that the masculine will take over.
Mhm.
And the masculine, when it takes over, it's overworking, it's overdoing. So it's more pressure, more work, more of that, like, whip, like the now move, like do it, and it brings the structures very tight. And that's what's happening inside. That's what was happening inside. So when I started to work with my archetypes that of the feminine that I needed to create, because the whole thing is that of course there's amazing archetypes of the feminine already. I don't need to invent the wheel.
Right.
However, for me, it felt a little bit like out there. Like I needed to have something more tangible, something more. I'm a Capricorn, ascendant Capricorn. Like I needed to have more of that every day. Like, who is this part of me? Like,
Yep.
it's not Aphrodite. I love Aphrodite, but I can't relate to you right now. Like, who is this voice in my head, in myself that is telling me, right? And that's why I was trying to crack that code and eventually came together. But the thing with this is like there was one missing link, one part of me that was missing. And this is the part that you and I are very fond of and we teach because is the part that was left behind or was hidden or was made wrong or was made taboo. And so we need to bring her back. When we bring that, then, as I call it, and because I'm from Argentina, then we can dance the tango with the masculine. I don't know if you ever heard of Lynn Twist.
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
well, Lynn Twist is an amazing writer, and she wrote the book The Soul of Money, which I highly recommend to everyone. And she talks about that there is a prophecy. Sorry, Indian American, is that how you say that? Okay. Prophecy that tells that in the 20th century, the bird of humanity will come back to balance. And basically, I was looking for that balance. How do we do this? And it says that the bird of humanity is flying with one wing because one wing is weak and the other one has to overdo it to keep the bird afloat. But when you bring this other wing, which is obviously the feminine, then the bird can soar. So that visual was super helpful for me to understand what I needed to do. I was already really good at the masculine. Like I knew how to get things done. I knew how to bring things together. And of course, all right, in relationship and stuff, I have my issues that I also had to heal, but that's for another talk. But for the purposes of understanding this, I knew that if I brought more attention to my feminine, I brought the feminine to her power, that then this wing will relax and it would be much easier. Because to me, again, I didn't want not to be in my masculine. We both have feminine and masculine energies. We're not talking about gender, we're talking about energies, right? So I'm very driven. I'm ambitious. I love making money. I love creating things. Creating is also feminine, but I like getting things done. I like to accomplish, like even in my house when I have everything clean, oh, it feels so good, right? Like that's a masculine energy.
Yep.
But without being in the equation, without my desires being in the equation, anything that I create, anything that I accomplish didn't make any sense.
Yep.
So I needed to bring myself to that space. And so 2020, I was like, time out. Like, I need a break.
Yep.
And, my whole fear was this is also part of the receiving and part of the scarcity mindset that we need to heal. And why I'm so passionate about also, what I'm going to be teaching in the program, because it's all about this. It's like, I was like, well, what if I stop, everything will fall apart. Everything that I created would make no sense. And, Lauren, I might get a little emotional here, but part of me being in the vault especially with 2024, for me was also a year where I said, okay, I am going to fully allow, and this doesn't mean that I didn't do anything, but like you, I purposely stop myself from producing and making money actively. Okay. Because I needed time and space for myself. So I call it my sabbatical, which it's not like I stopped anything. But since 2020 and 2021, when I said to myself in 2020, something needs to change. I can't continue to do this. In 2021, I had the most beautiful opportunity. And again, this is also part when you create space, things come to you. And I'm gonna tie it all in a second. I know I'm going back and forth and time and time.
No,
But we have it. I know you follow me. But in 2021, I was invited. It came to me. Someone reached out of nowhere to be part of a summit, online summit for the Spanish market, a desire that I had for a long time. I couldn't see how I was making it all work. The English market, the Spanish market, how am I gonna, like I felt like impossible. So I had to stop and put the brakes and take a step back with the English market because I needed some time for me to review a lot of things. And that's when the opportunity to join the Spanish, because of course I'm bilingual, so I opened and I translated all my programs. But then I was scared. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen with the English market? When you reached out,
yeah,
just now I'm coming out
yep.
and I set all my structures, which is what an empowered woman does with the empowered masculine, set all the structures to be able to coach in English and Spanish. And I'm continue to create this, right? Uh, you reaching out to me, someone that I've known from before. It's like that whole fear of if I stop, everything will fall apart was such an evidence that what's come to you will come to you, right? What's meant for you, sorry, what's meant to you will come to you. And that deep trust, again, from surrendering to what you know is true for you and follow that. Follow what you know is true for you. So it's not like I stopped doing anything. No, I set myself up
Mhm.
in at the end of 2023 to create my sabbatical. I strategically created my sabbatical. I knew what I needed to do. I set the structures, I put the things in motion. I cut some expenses, I cut some part of my team. I said, I need this. And I
Yes.
put myself first. And it worked. And now you're reaching out for to do this, which is so fun because it was perfect timing for me. And I'm like, well, see, like when you create and it was perfect because I did a lot of deep healing, a lot of the deep healing that I needed after coaching for 15 years
Yes.
needed to take part, right? Like, and it wasn't all pretty. Like my marriage wasn't, I needed to do a lot of things in my marriage. I needed to do a lot of things like questioning my business. I was almost ready to go and do something completely different. I'm like, maybe I'm not meant to continue to coach. I a part of me knew that it wasn't true, but somehow I was like willing to let everything fall, like
You have,
everything fall.
you have to. You have
Right.
to let everything fall and fall away. And I think if you never question, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a coach, especially doing something that like you're really bringing your soul through and in a way selling that, you're not selling your soul, but you know what I mean? Like you're bringing your wisdom through and packaging that to help others. I think especially in that field, in this field, if you don't question, like, should I just not give up, but should I leave this, be done, and do something else?
Maybe that's what it is.
You can't, then you're not fully choosing it. You know what I mean? Like if you're terrified to question whether or not this is right. And I don't mean like every week or every day, like, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? No, I mean like in big
Yeah.
times of death and rebirth, if you're not, you have to be willing. The feminine requires really that it all goes up onto the chopping block.
Yeah.
Offer it all up, and a lot gets cut off. Some things get rearranged, but how you're talking about surrender, it's like if you're gripping on to your business, like I'm not willing to even think about letting this go because I'm too afraid of what that would mean, right? Or I'm too afraid of what that would make me or who that would make me. It's like
Yeah.
I have to be like, okay, I'm willing to let this go if that's what's in my highest and best good. Like I'm willing to release my grip on this, and if it needs to be cut away, I trust that whatever's next is going to come through, right? But again, it all of this is dependent on us trusting ourselves and our feminine. And I
Yeah.
think that that is actually why most women will do anything and everything to avoid a death and rebirth. And why most women, when they go through it, because again, like we're in different seasons and cycles of our lives all the time. So when you were talking about like past success as an entrepreneur, redefining your success now doesn't invalidate the success you have, and it doesn't make it wrong that that's what you were focused on at that time. That was the season of your life. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then
of course.
growing and evolving, and you're like, wait, oh, how I'm measuring my success or my sense of leadership, my, connection to self is changing and these things aren't working anymore. And it's like, again, if you're not willing to let it all go, put it all up for, for not auction, but again, putting it all up on the chopping block, then
To be seen, and to then see what you want and what you don't want. But of course, it requires that you cultivate a deep relationship with yourself. And until, I can say that I was able to do that. And again, it was almost like, okay, I'm just, those trusting exercise that you fall and see if someone catches you, right? Like that was it. And I was willing to lose it all. Of course, I would not been able to do that 5 years ago. I started in 2020. That's when it started, and it took me 5 years or 4 years to be able to do it. Me with already the work I already had on myself. So I want to make sure that whoever's listening to this is like, yeah, yeah, what did she say? And well, I'm sharing my journey as we were asking, but to be honest, I know that it's not easy to do. And for me, it was a deeper, here's what I want to say. The feminine will continue to call you. I say the wild woman. That's the archetype that part of the archetype system, the archetype that will continue to call you to your evolution. And so it's like waves. It's not like she's telling me every day and it's a nagging voice, because that's not the wild woman. The wild woman will call you when it's needed, and will call you when your life perhaps feels flat. And whichever level you are, that's what was happening. I felt like I looked around and I'm like, I wasn't feeling that fire, that excitement, that aliveness within me. And I knew that there was something missing. I didn't know what it was. And that's the adventure. That's the beauty, is opening up to seeing what could that be, you
definitely.
know? And yeah, so I want to make sure for me, the practice that I go back to time and time again. I know you are a big, super pleasure, which, oh my gosh, it's so indulgent to watch you even talk. I'm like, oh, and I started with pleasure, and for me, it became more about receiving.
Yeah.
Which is all connected, we know it, because you can't receive pleasure, you can't experience pleasure if you don't open to receive. But for me, receiving again, because my go-to still is somehow my mind.
Yep.
So, I receiving is what brings me back to, the fundamentals of the feminine. It's like, if think about it, biologically, we are designed to receive,
Hope.
right?
Yep.
we can enter and penetrate it. And
Yep.
if we don't receive,
Yep.
then, you know, we can create life. So, right. So this is why to me it feels so primitive, and also knowing what we learned about being a woman, that we had to give and do for others, which is all masculine energy. One thing is to nurture, and another thing is to give and do in order to be worthy. So there's so many mixed messages that we were not taught what it means to be feminine, to be women. And this part of the feminine I'm very passionate about. That's why I'm also so excited to share with everyone.
Yeah, and I think as you said, we weren't taught this, and even more importantly, I think right now with where we are, excuse me, in 2025, especially here in the United States, we didn't have those of us who are doing this work, who are teaching it, who are leading it, who are even consuming it and applying it to our lives in other ways. We did not grow up with models of women who were really rooted in that primitive feminine, that sacred feminine, that wise feminine.
Mhm.
And so it's like we're kind of flying blind, where we're like, oh, there's not a whole ton of role models showing us how to redefine success, wealth, happiness as a woman in your 30s, 40s, 50s, like whatever that looks like, however your life looks. Because, you know, we do have so many more options than the generations before us, which is amazing. But then it's like, okay, well, that means I can kind of do anything. That's a little scary, you know what I mean? And
Right,
so,
right, yeah.
right, that's again one of the reasons why I have brought everybody together in this vault because I just feel like all of the experts, yourself included, your wisdom, your transmission, the work that you do in the world, it's so powerful, it's so potent. And and again, it's like you have a take on the feminine that I don't have, and I love receiving, and vice versa. And so bringing all of these experts together and all of these women together is like just a vortex that I feel like the world needs right now. And so as we wrap up, Paula, is there anything that you want to like share either about your work or anything left on your heart or even about the vault in general? Like whatever is kind of still left for you.
Well, no, I'm very grateful again to be here to reconnect and to offer, I'm going to teach the art of the feminine art of money. It's included receiving, obviously, in our vault that you so magically and amazingly created. I feel like you're so on point with trusting yourself to bring this into the world right now. When you were talking about like we didn't receive the role models, it's not just here in America, it's everywhere, even in a country, because I grew up with novelas, with the soap operas, and the drama and the feminine will always be like betrayed and left, and left and all that stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Like, yes, we get to we all experience not the fullest empower feminine. So it's time to continue to reclaim that, but more for the outside and like what can I do with it? It's more about how can it be more. It support me to be more my authentic self. So that's what I feel, because when a woman, when you're connected with yourself, when you feel integrated, when you can dance the tango, that's what I was going to say before, right? Like when you bring your feminine and your masculine, you can dance the tango. If you never watch a clip of tango, I invite you to do that because it's just so beautiful. And when you get to connect at that level within yourself, where you make decisions and you fully trust yourself, you trust your decisions, and things come to you. and then you build the structures. My relationship with my husband continues to shift. We both are doing our work. And so it's all part of it in my relationships. Like this year, like you, I also took this time, the past year, 2024, I also like solidify a lot of the structures that are so essential for me to then be able to come into the world with a full cup. And knowing that I set myself up, created those structures. So then when I go back to the world, then I know how to replenish myself. And part of the work that I do is about receiving, is about connecting with your feminine, is dancing the tango with the masculine, and living the life that you truly feel living, that it's connected with who you truly are, and you're going to keep evolving, so you're going to have to continue to adjust it, but you're doing it from an authentic place.
Uh,
So
I love it. And again, like Paula is she's such a powerhouse, and I'm so excited to have you in the vault. So you can get your ticket to the vault below, and you can also check Paula out even more with her social media, and I have those links below as well. And anything else on your heart that you want to share, Paula, before we say goodbye?
well, I really invite women to join the vault because it's a labor of love. And I know every single woman, I know a few women that are going to be part of it as well. I don't know all of them because they're all magical, but I personally, I know some of the amazing women, you included, that I know the level of work that they have, and I know how transformational it's going to be for every single woman that decides to join. So yeah, like my thing is join us and we'll co-create magic together.
Come on. Again, Paula, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did.
I
Make
love
sure to tune back into the podcast. I have more women from the vault coming on in the next few days. And I will see you next time.
it. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.